So today, we've been having some discussions about creating art every day. What do you create? Yada, yada, yada. And along with that, I think there's kind of been a question sort of permeating these conversations, maybe annoyingly so, of a balance between vision and craft, right? So to recap, the day before yesterday, I said that to get into creating art every day, the most important is do. That is the most important part, right? That is all that matters. You got to do, right? I said do and do honestly. I said create every single day. That was my only advice I gave. Very simple. Next day, I was discussing, okay, you got to create every day. What do you create, right? I said create anything you want. I said the only caveat I'd say is try to avoid reference or basing things off other people's ideas as much as possible. Learn to hone your own vision, your own ideas. With that, though, comes some conversations, right? Because, people may say creating every day is great, but it's useless if you're not practicing the important skills, right? People might say creating art off your ideas every day is also great, but equally as useless if you're not using reference to get down perspective and things like that. Many of these are really valid criticism, extremely valid. They're criticism that actually can 100% permeate my own work. I am teaching myself to paint over on this series here in Paint Talk. I'm trying to teach myself to paint. And two things you can say about me 100% is that I don't have technical skills down 100%, and I don't value doing drills with them quite enough. These are very valid criticisms that nobody would actually disagree with. They're true. These are true things, right? So with that in mind, though, what is my answer to this? How do you balance vision and technical skill in art? I want to caveat this whole conversation. This is a debate. This is the first thing. If you're somebody who's watched the last video and the video before that and this video trying to earnestly get into your artistic journey, you've encountered your first question that but there is not a correct answer to this at all, right? And along with there not being a correct answer, there is actually possibly never going to be a correct answer, because one very true thing does exist in the middle of this conversation. You cannot enact your creative visions without technical skill, and your technical skills are worthless without creative visions to apply them to. These things are probably most correctly 50-50, I'd say. I'd say they're very dependent on each other. However, I also want to try and answer this question from my own experience and maybe, just maybe, give you a few tidbits to help you with your own artistic journey. To the hypothetical person who just discovered painting a day ago and is watching the series of videos that have gone on the last 3 days to help them. This person doesn't exist, but we gotta act like they do. I mean, this would be worthless without it. So, what is my answer? Technical skill or vision? I tend to opt for vision, right? I have a couple ideas on why. One, technical skill can be learned to a greater extent than vision. This is not to say that vision cannot be learned. If you're somebody that feels you do not have great ideas for art, however, or you're rather not getting creative ideas, but genuinely just get artist's block. If you're somebody who's like, I need to search things up to create or whatever, I don't want to say that like, oh, you will never make good art. Like, that's not at all what I'm saying, by any means. I think vision can be taught. I think actually learning it early on and working off your own imagination is one of the most important skills to learn, which is why I advise in the last couple paint talks to create every day and do it with other things. Like do it without other things, do it without reference, right? So I think this is a skill that not only can be learned incredibly well if you start early, right? However, I think it can be learned more, or rather less, than technical skill. What do I mean by that? Technical skill can be taught to a computer, and it will come out the same way every time. And it will be just as useful every time. Let's say, and this is kind of a scarily relevant conversation right now with AI, let's say you teach a computer how to paint like Da Vinci. That computer will do it. And every other computer can do the same thing. If you, and the big part of that is that if every computer does the same thing and paints this painting in the same way, it is just as valued. No matter how unique technical skill is, it gets the same degree of value. Can you execute this thing on a technical level? Yes, you are just as valuable as all the other people that can execute it on that same technical level. If if you taught a bunch of computers to think like Da Vinci, suddenly none of that would be valuable. Because what's valued in vision is its uniqueness, whereas what's valued in technical skill is its ability to execute on predetermined principles. This is why I think technical skill is the lesser of the two important things to focus on, right? I'm going to use Steve Jobs as an example here. Not the biggest Steve Jobs fan, but I do think he illustrates this very well. Coding, engineering, mechanics, these are all an art, right? I believe these are all an art. And if you don't, sorry, I guess. I don't really know. They're an art. They are an art form, right? Making technology is an art. Steve Jobs, was not doing these. He, I believe, had a cursory knowledge of some coding and some technical things, but for the most part, he did not know what he could never have made the iPhone, and he didn't. He only could come up with the idea to make the iPhone, right? But when Steve Jobs had to do this, he did not teach himself these technical skills. He got other people to do the work. Now, I think a conversation definitely comes. Is it Steve Jobs' creation and are all these other people? I tend to side with the idea that all these other people's creation in one way or another, right? Or I guess if you want to refer to Apple as a collective, it's Apple's creation, I feel, at that point, right? That's a whole other debate. However, the point remains, Steve Jobs is the one credited with creating the iPhone. And as much as all those other people could create the iPhone, and he couldn't, he's the only one that thought of the iPhone when all these other people did not think of it, right? Their skill was replicable. Their skill was he put it to use to make this thing. Now, I'm hoping none of you have ideas for paintings and are going to go make a sweatshop to make those paintings happen. That's not at all what I'm inferring here. That's a terrible idea. That's a really bad thing. But I do think this example can illustrate, perhaps in a flawed way, how vision is always going to be more valued than skill, right? Because skill is something you can learn. Along with this, I would say that, as much as I do think you could teach vision, I think that you would get Steve Jobs taught how to make an iPhone before one of those engineers can make it, can be taught to think of Steve Jobs' idea for the iPhone. Does that make sense? Right? I think one of these ideas, one of these skills is a lot easier to teach than the other one. I say this, of course, as I paint a cube that is off in lighting. This cube is not lit from the right sources at all. I suppose, there's actually no lighting source for this painting, so I lack in technical skill, right? However, I still stand on the idea that vision is more important, because I think that you can teach someone how to do something, a replicable skill, over and over again, whereas it's much harder to teach somebody to come up with a vision, right? This is why I do say that you should focus your ideas at the center of your craft, right? I want to go against what I've been saying this whole time, though, and say that, your ideas unexecuted are not worth anything. Like, somebody who has a million ideas for movies that would be the best movie of all time are not making Citizen Kane and The Godfather and Vertigo. They're not making the best movie of all time. They have ideas, but ideas are kind of mean nothing until they're put into practice, right? Which is why I say that as much as I do believe vision to be the more important skill in your creative journey, I do find that a vision will get you farther. I will also say right next to that your vision is worthless without some semblance of technical skill. Now let's do another experiment here. Somebody who has, let's say decent technical proficiency, but a whole lot of vision, and somebody who has decent vision, but really great technical proficiency. I think the person with a really great vision is going to make more interesting things. I think really weird example out of the blue here, but One. One is the name of a mangaka who makes One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100, right? Obviously, the best version of One Punch Man is the one with Yusuke Murata as the artist. I believe that's the name of him. What else has he done? One of the best manga artists out there right now, and he makes the One Punch Man manga that you can get in stores, right? However, the One Punch Man anime is based off a webcomic by One, who cannot draw. And it's amazing. It is an amazing comic book, because he has a vision here that he's executing upon, right? Right next to that, I think, is Mob Psycho, which is his other series, which has still not been redrawn by anybody with more technical proficiency than him, and is only growing more popular. You know, these are huge series that millions of people love, and they're drawn terribly. This guy's gotten better over the years, trying to execute his own vision. However, he is by no means as good as some of the worst mangaka in many other magazines right now. And I think this is a perfect illustration of why vision is so important. But the caveat I serve to offer here of like visions, your ideas are BS without execution, is not me to say like you need to go learn how to paint like Picasso before you can start that idea you have. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying your vision unpursued is nothing. Vision without any technical skill is nothing. Vision with an attempted technical skill is everything. If you have ideas that you think are seriously interesting, that you love, that you're passionate about, maybe they're not even good, but you're passionate about them. If you follow these ideas with your whole heart because you love them, you will get technical skill. If you just try and learn technical skill for the sake of it with nothing you want to enact with it, I don't think you'll learn it. Which is why I present this question not as an idea of what is more important here, because I think that's an impossible question to answer, right? There is an irony that's not lost on me in me seriously lacking in technical skill as I try to answer this question, 100%. But right alongside that, I want to say that I think that this question's not so much about which was more important, technical skill or vision, but which comes first. It's more of like a chicken and the egg situation, right? And their answer is this is a disputed thing as well. But I think that if you have a vision you want to chase, the technical skill will come after that. Whereas the other way around, I am much less familiar with it happening. Which is why I do think that trying to hone your creative ideas is more important than trying to practice, drills to become a mastermind at, making a well-perspective laid out piece, right? A well-perspective laid out piece is terrible if it's of a building that nobody's interested in. A piece that a 5-year-old drew of a building that is insane and whimsical and nobody else could have thought of is the most interesting thing on earth. And that is why I will always say that I do believe technical skill comes after vision. Not as less important, but comes after. That's my take. This is the painting. As you could tell during this paint talk, I kind of had some doubts in it. Along the way of painting it. Definitely improvement from the cube that I did on day 5, which I'm looking at on my wall right now. Huge improvement there. If you guys want to go back to paint talk number 5 all the way at the beginning and see that cube, huge improvement, which is really what the series is about, right? It's not really about me having great paintings, it's about me having a painting that's better than yesterday's. So in that way, I suppose I can call this a win. However, I think I got really in my head making this because I was talking about how technical skill is not as important as I kind of realized while painting this, like, wow, do I lack in technical skill when it comes to these very, very basic ideas of form. But that's why we keep going into tomorrow. So go follow over the Instagram and the TikTok to see this painting without all these filters in its full glory. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Tice. This is Paint Talk episode 244. And until next time, I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.